Well, welcome. Tonight, we're going to look at the world from the conservative side. Let's start with introductions.
Ed Bertarelli, Chairman of the Milford Republican Town Committee.
Chris Moore, member of the FinCom here in Milford.
Bob Burns, Hopedale Selectman.
Now, before we start something, Bob, you've brought up some interesting concepts over the years. I have to ask you, the Democratic-controlled Congress in Boston.
Hold on.
They gave you a commendation. Democrat.
Yep.
They gave you a commendation for.
It was the Senate, actually.
It was the Senate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Still
and it was-
mainly Democrats.
It was signed by Republican Ryan Fatman and by the Democrats. Yes, for 9 years of uninterrupted, dedicated service to the town of Hopedale as a selectman.
So the rumor that they gave it to you because you weren't running is not accurate.
Wow.
Perhaps it is.
Allegedly.
There may be some something behind that.
And I can see people, well, there's one less of them running.
Yeah.
I am running for the Board of Health, however, so I'm not.
Don't tell them, they'll take back your.
I was just going to say.
Okay, Ed, if we start looking on the national side, the
National
budget.
or state?
Which one do you want to start with?
Let's
I'll
start
let
with
you
the
call.
state, then move to the national.
Let's start with
Do a
the
little
state.
shot on the state.
Charlie Baker. You can argue whether he's doing a great job, plus or minus, but it seems like most of the people in the Commonwealth feel that he is doing a good job.
He's ranked as the either the most popular or second most popular governor after the Republican governor from Maryland. And they both face similar situations because Maryland is probably even more
They're
lopsidedly
probably
Democratic.
more blue than,
Yes, yes.
but not by much.
No, but still they're more, whatever. So, I mean, Baker is a consummate manager. There's no question about it. I think particularly the House of Representatives has always had a pretty good relationship with the Republican governor. Whoever the speaker has been, Sal DeMaisi not as much, but all the ones before and after have been, I think, work closely with the, they
Well, you almost have to. I mean, if all 12 Republicans got
Well-
together, they can't really sway the vote.
Yeah, but it wouldn't really matter how many Democrats were in because when they meet at the budget, it's the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the governor. The members, the 100 and something members, Democratic members of the legislature do exactly also what the leadership says because raises and everything else are in the thing. And that's an interesting one, how that raise for the legislators passed on an emergency
Now, was
preamble.
it for the legislators or for the leadership of
Well,
the legislators?
It was done very cleverly. Whoever researched it was brilliant because they gave raises to the judiciary. Well, that is not if the legislators had given themselves and the governor and everyone else raises, it could have been appealed in a referendum. Because it went to the members of the judiciary, it was appeal-proof. So that was perfect in a sense because that was the way the Trojan horse to get into the thing. So it basically made it. If they could pass it, it was done. The governor could veto it, but it will be overwhelmed, overridden. The question is, the rank and file, the junior reps probably didn't get much. They get per diems or whatever, but it was very, very geared toward. Well, I take that back a little because every Democrat in the state Senate is a chairman of a committee, coincidentally, and a vice chairman. So they doubled and tripled the stipend. So some people are getting $65,000 more raised just in one swoop.
Well, but I mean, when you look at it, most people who look at salaries are saying, well, our congressman to Beacon Hill, our Massachusetts congressman, are making 60 grand a year salary.
Plus,
But you don't think of pluses. You say, what's their salary?
Yeah, but it's not a full-time job, although they like to think it is. It's a part-time job.
But how do you
that's
do?
being generous, calling it a part-time
Yeah.
job. But
I mean, the fact is, if you see the number of days they're in meetings or whatever, I mean, where it's sort of a debate to say $60,000. If they were getting 160, they'd still be getting these stipends. So what I'm saying is that for many people, including the Republican leadership, the few of them that there are, they got pay increases as well. So it was geared to, under the guise, which just shows you how they knew how unpopular it was going to be. Once they put the judges in, it was referendum proof. So very
Now,
clever.
I mean, but Ed, Chris wants to run to be a rep or a senator. How can you do that when you say it's part-time? You couldn't run your business part-time.
No, and that's why it's geared to a certain professions.
Attorneys.
To be
Lawyers.
honest with you, lawyers, real estate agents, consultants, that type of job, and that's why when you are in that type of industry, that's why you'll notice that that those are the people that are running for those seats because they are a
the only
a
ones can
part-time job.
afford it.
Well, there's no question. I mean, that is a lot of money, but if you're raising a family and that type of stuff, and maybe it's a single income or that,
Yeah.
you know.
And you can still practice law while
Yeah.
you're, because the days of heavy lifting in the legislature, especially since the budget's crafted by other people. I mean, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, the Speaker of the House do the budget. I was there when we were doing the state library program. Would go and talk to people and they'd say, I'm not blowing you off, you go to Senator Moore, I'm going to meet with the Senate President. I get 3 things from the Senate President. And the one thing I'm going to ask for is increased money for libraries. We all get 2 or 3 things, and we bring in that are favorites of ours that we'd like in the budget, and then he balances them, whatever. But you're going in hand in hand because you're not formulating the
That's the
budget.
fundamental problem I have. These people are making laws. They're creating legislation that controls my life. Why wouldn't I want to pay them $160 and tell them, by the way, it's full-time?
Yeah, but there's
Because
no
that was
reason
going to
for
force them
yeah.
to be full-time.
There's no reason for that job to be full-time.
Right.
The last thing in the world we need them is to be full-time. There's not enough to do.
Really?
I don't think so. Absolutely not.
And they have staffers as well in there too. That's the other
Yeah.
thing.
Absolutely not.
They should be in session. When you add up all the time that they spend in session, it probably comes out to somewhere between 30 and 40 days
Yes.
a year.
Imagine-
So they could theoretically, like they do in New Hampshire, be in session for 1 month and then go home to the regular
But
jobs.
here's where I'm stuck.
Well,
You sit there and say, how many people are between the Senate and the House?
200.
Okay. $40 billion company they're running?
Well, not really, but yeah.
Well,
I mean, their input in the decisions, as I just said, I think a few minutes ago, is minimal. It's limited to 6 or 8 people. The rest is superfluous. They're in there for constituent services, for citations, for whatever, feel-good stuff. And, if you call up with you want a special bill filed, if we need a liquor license in Milford or whatever. I mean, I'll give you an example. But I heard it on I think it was on an MRC today going in, that the wiretap laws in Massachusetts were enacted in 1969. They have never been changed since.
Right.
And both the governor and Maura Healey, the attorney general, say it's impeding the crime-fighting efforts because they were basically done before Al Gore invented the
I can
internet.
video you all I want, as long as I don't audio.
No, what I just mean is,
No, this is
Yeah.
wiretapping.
Yeah.
Oh,
They were
wiretapping.
they were enacted when the rotary phone was
yes,
in.
1969.
So
Yeah. Pre-Al Gore that we entered the internet, as I'll say it again.
And-
But when you say wiretapping, everything was done for that, and I said, well, if I get a legal order for a writ from a judge, what's the problem?
But I'm
Because
just,
the
the
law
language
was
is so archaic.
The,
Yeah.
the language was specific to wired phones,
Not wireless.
not wireless.
So I
phones.
can't tap a cell phone?
Correct. According to the
Yeah.
Oh.
My
to the-
point is,
the
though,
current
a
laws.
key thing like that in the fighting drugs, fighting crime or whatever, there should be certain things that are prime things that need to be adjusted with time. 1969. This says, so when you say that they manage a $40 billion budget, no. Some people manage it, and then the department heads run it. And I think that's one of the reasons why Baker's so popular, is he was a consummate manager when he was a chairman of secretary of A&F or whatever. So,
And you can't lose sight of the fact that they eliminated the per diem allowance, which was they got paid to drive back and forth to work, which none of us do. Never did. I never did, anyways. And that averaged about $2,500 a year. Well, $7,500 a year.
What- yeah,
$7,500 a year, and they made it permanent, but they more than doubled it to $20,000 a year. So now it's called a home office allowance, and they can use the $20,000 to set up their home office, and then they get to deduct the expenses of setting up the home office from their income tax.
But don't they get 1099 on the 20 grand? Don't they have to pay income tax on that?
Well, I don't know that, but
But I think
I
though.
mean, we would.
Yeah, but-
If I
yeah.
got an allowance,
No.
but they get to deduct it even if they do have to
yeah,
pay
you
taxes.
just gotta be careful, because realistically, I remember when I moved to Milford, and it cost, it was like 60 some, almost 80 grand by the time they paid my housing, moved me. I got to pay taxes on that.
Yep.
And I said, but no big deal, because it's dollar for dollar was spent moving me. Then I looked at the tax form. Temporary housing. Well, for 6 months, I'm paying $1,600 for a place, which I paid taxes on that amount. It says, enter the amount you paid. I did. Enter 2,500. Enter the lower number. So, all of a sudden, I had $14,000 taxable income that I had spent, and I can't deduct.
Yeah.
So I wonder sometimes if they really get the whole value.
I think though, again,
But on the whole, let's not get away from the
yeah,
numbers.
yeah.
And let's just talk about the fashion in which it was done. That's, I think, was what
The
everyone
general
has a problem
public
with. Hey, if a person's going to get a raise, justify it, do it in the open, and I don't think there was any issue. I think it was just the way
Felt
that it was.
sneaky.
Well, it certainly was.
To me, that's what bothered me. Hey, if someone deserves a raise, they deserve a raise. I don't think that they deserve the amount they got, but that's not the point. The point is just the way it is, and trying to kind of hide
And
it.
the issue I had more than anything was, I didn't understand who's on first.
Well-
Who got the raise?
well, that,
because
you
our
think they
rep-
were going to tell you? And the point is, what rep, particularly a Democratic rep, a Democrat rep, a new rep or whatever, is going to vote against the leadership when you're told,
come
okay?
on. It's like
But-
voting against
but
your boss.
To reinforce what Chris said, we're getting down into
Forget the weeds, but Ed,
Yeah.
help me understand. I mean, we had article after article in the local newspapers that our rep got a big raise. And then another newspaper came back and said, no, he's a junior member. He didn't get a big raise. I didn't know.
Isn't that irrelevant, though?
But-
If they both were partially true, I guess you'd want to say.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't think it's irrelevant, because to Chris's point, if you're doing the right thing, then stand up, tell me what you're doing, why. The old adage,
was covered.
two reasonable people equally informed seldom disagree. Problem is being equally informed.
Yeah.
And I never felt equally informed.
Well,
did you
they're
feel
not going to,
informed?
they're not going to, if you read any place about any explanation of this bill, even a paper like the Globe, which, allegedly has good reporters covering this political stuff, by the time you got to the minutia, your mind was numb.
Yep.
But to get back to the thing, if they thought this was the right thing to do, why disguise it and put the judiciary in? That made it referendum proof, because they knew in any referendum it was going to be, it probably would bring out our sort of voters too, more conservative voters. This wasn't a legalized pot issue or whatever. It would bring out more conservative-minded people, and they did it by attaching it to the judges. So I mean,
how do you feel about Charlie Baker and Karen Polito's performance?
well, I think the public, never mind how I feel, but the public has shown, I think, the overwhelming number of Republicans, obviously, but a huge number of.
But I mean,
And-
forget
and-
the politics.
No,
of-
no, I'm just going by philosophy. A number of independents, who were the unenrolled voters, and a significant number of the Democrats like what he's doing, because he's a moderate Republican, which is the Massachusetts mold. Karen's his partner, and I think apparently he's going to run for re-election, and I think he'll win. It'll be interesting to see what sort of decision the Democrats
Should he
decide to
run
make.
again on his record?
Absolutely, and I think that's a lot of the times that's what people like about what he's done. He's gone out there and he's tackling issues that the previous administration let go. Exactly, they let it go. I don't want to get in there. I don't want to take care of
Has
that.
he lived up to his promises?
I think it's still a work in progress because I think that there were so many issues
See,
that were there.
I don't see that, Chris. The guy came in saying, I'm going to take on issues. Whether he's finished them or not,
Yeah.
Well,
I think he's lived up to everything he promised
Yes.
us.
Yeah.
You know,
Remember-
has he completed it?
Well, that's what I mean, exactly.
But no,
and
no
that's
one,
more.
anyone knows that this is you can't stop 8 years of bad news in a year and a half.
There's no question.
Right.
And you don't take what did we end up with? How many billion-dollar deficit? We've forgotten that.
Yep.
You know,
Well,
that's
how much?
Probably,
You're a money guy.
but Ed, that was probably the strongest thing I saw him do, is not sit there and whine and say, I'm $1.5 billion short.
Well-
it's all so-and-so's fault. There's nothing I can. The guy seemed to put his head down and say, oh, crap.
Yep.
I am short. Now let's figure out
But-
how to get it under
But when
control.
people, but yes, but that isn't whining or whatever. It's pointing out what the last fiscal policies
No,
did to
but
the
Ed, what I
state.
mean by whining is, if you remember our previous president, all we ever heard was, it was the guy before me's fault and there's nothing
yeah.
I can do
Yeah.
to fix it.
You know,
that to me is whining.
You're exactly right. And Governor Baker never did that. And the other thing that he's done, I think that is very popular as well, is him coming from, you know, a municipality, and Karen coming from a municipality as well. They're focusing their budgeting and that to go back to there. And instead of having it in the big machine in Boston and having the money there, they're focusing on getting money back to the local communities and having them tackle their problems and getting them more funding back to the towns, because that's where they both came
I
from.
remember when Governor Patrick was here in this studio, stumping for his $2 billion increase, and I asked him a question. I said, will any of that money come outside of 128?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, because I said the impression is Metro West pays for it all, and North South benefits.
Yeah.
Well,
Another thing that they did that was that had a large impact on every city and town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is they passed a local city and town initiative to streamline government that allowed the everyday process that happen in towns, moving money around that previously had to go to town meeting, now can be decided by the Board of Selectmen. A different type of administrative
Nitty-gritty,
things.
you know.
Yeah, the Municipal Modernization Act.
Yeah, and that was just, they were just tweaked a little bit so that they weren't so cumbersome. Because you would always have town meetings that would have all these articles on them that were like, that said, you know, this place could take it from this line and put it in that line.
Yeah, you couldn't go above and below.
Yeah,
if it's-
and
Yep.
so now they've modernized it where you bring it before the Board of Selectmen, everybody reads it, everybody talks about it, you talk about it in an open meeting, and
So at the end of the day, you've got a guy who ran on certain issues, seems to be addressing the ones he ran on like he promised, seems to be being effective.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Chris,
It's just-
we're
it's
not
just-
seeing massive cuts in our
No, but
local
I
aid.
think he's,
No, you're
I think
not.
he's
It's just-
trusted.
yeah.
And that's key thing for the general public. Forget about the political, operators. The general public trusts him. They trust his opinion
They
and
trust
whatever.
his judgment.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
I think more than anything,
Yeah.
his judgment has proved
Yep.
that he's making
Yeah.
sound decisions. Now, I am one of the blue people, and I see his performance. I got to believe they're going to run somebody against him.
Well, the question would be what your strategy is, whether any of the big dogs in the race move forward and challenge him, or whether it's some of the people that are mentioned who will run a race and lose. The question would be, the challengers could be the treasurer, Suzanne Bump, it could be Maura Healey, the attorney general. Problem is you run for governor and lose, you're out as attorney general.
Yeah.
So I suspect the strategy for the Democrats will be to run a candidate who will lose, and then look to see who in
'Cause
4 years.
what I'm wondering is, if
Karen,
if I'm a Healy or somebody, and I'm a serious candidate, and I sit there and say, maybe if I sit this
Yeah,
dance
well,
out,
Yeah.
the
Because-
next time, I'll have a
Running for
lot
an
easier.
open seat.
You got an open seat.
Unless the governor runs for third term, which he's allowed to do. There's not any barrier to that. But yeah, they're doing strategizing now.
Now, if I'm going to run against the governor, be it I'm a sacrificial lamb, I'm just running to
Yes, yeah.
annoy, or I'm a serious candidate, what do I go after Baker on?
Well, I think, again, some of the people that have been mentioned are not, Jay Gonzalez, Seti Warren, the mayor of Newton, are not fringe candidates. They're serious candidates. I might think their point of view is mistaken, but they're serious in what they believe. And the question is that when people look at that, especially in an off-year election, which is an off year, the turnout will be lower, more
But
shaded
Ed,
toward.
no matter what,
Well-
what am I can't just run and say, vote for me, I'm a nice woman, I'm a nice guy. I've got to have something to run on. What will the opponents
to be
run
honest with you,
on?
I'm sitting here, and that's why I was quiet. I'm having a hard time thinking of one solid issue that I can say, this is what I'm going to go after him on.
They'll find something.
They
Yeah, I
will,
know,
but my
but
point is, I'm
what-
trying to think
what
about...
legitimate? Hey, I want to raise your taxes. and
Exactly.
spend more money?
I could name anything right now, too, but I'm
They're
looking for a
loser issues.
legitimate
But again,
issue
I
that they
think
could run
I
on.
think we could talk about it for a long point. But the point is, any candidate who is looking beyond this coming election is looking toward the future. And what you would want to do if you position yourself, and what are we giving advice to the Democrats for, is they take Baker runs and wins. There's 8 years. Now, he's gone, so he doesn't run. Now what you would rely on as a candidate is the innate democratic nature of the state, and you'd run, oh yeah, he was okay, but here's what I
did
want.
fine. I'm
Here's what
gonna
here's what
build
I
on
want.
it.
I'm
Yep.
going to bring, well, I'm going to go further to the left, and we're going to
Yep.
have this and that and
Yep.
the other thing.
Yeah,
The
but Ed,
scary thing.
with all due respect, that dog doesn't hunt in my mind, saying, I'm
Well,
just going
I
to
didn't
be
say that.
more leftist than him.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all. What I'm trying to say is that you run if he retires with a phenomenal rating,
Right.
you run a deft campaign that is not attacking him, but it's
Right.
no. But the thing they think that the ominous factor in Massachusetts, and it's part of it leads us to Obamacare and whatever else is. If you look at the percentage of the state budgets that have been absorbed by Mass Health, Obamacare, and whatever, it's increasing at a catastrophic rate. It's amazing,
No.
and it's choking. It's choking more and more. We have to just say this because the public's not aware of this.
Over and over, Bob, you've been the one who's so supportive of Obamacare, saying kill it, kill it, kill it. And I got
not
to ask
going
you,
anywhere.
is it going to die
No.
on its own?
Never going to go away.
But with the
But what do you do? I mean, when you start going through, I'm a little disappointed because I'm tired of hearing repeal and replace. That just
No,
is
no.
wrong.
See, I want repeal,
yeah.
period. Not replace, repeal.
But
But
Bob,
what do you do with the people who count
but
on it?
Bob said the last show, and it was the exact that Ezekiel Emanuel and the man from Harvard who designed Obamacare,
Yes.
Gruber.
Gruber, Jonathan Gruber, I believe, never intended for this to be a success. They had timed the actuarial
wanted the
charts.
single payer
They
system,
they
and this is
want
gonna
this
get
to
us there.
fail.
Right.
Yes, and that is and in America, once you open the door to millions of people being qualified for Medicaid, which is a public welfare program, okay? It's paid for by
Yes.
by all the state budgets and all the federal budgets. It's awfully hard to shut the door because
You can't, Ed,
It's
you
what I mean.
can't
It's-
shut the
you-
door.
no, I just
it is.
said it's
It-
awfully hard
It's
to
a
shut
bell
the
you
door.
can't
But-
unring. is the
Yeah.
But
thing.
they,
exactly.
they don't want to, they won't shut the door because they won't redefine the problem.
But that's where
And I've stated before.
But Bob, that's where I differ with you. Repealing doesn't get me anywhere.
But I've stated before that people we do have an obligation, a moral obligation to treat people. We do not have a moral obligation to provide health insurance for people. And the only way they can make this work is to separate those two. Because once you say we have a moral obligation for health insurance, that means Chris, who's 18 years old, who's healthy, and the actuary tables say he's going to be in pretty good health until probably 40 or 50 years old, but he's got to start paying health insurance today. And he says, no, I don't want to.
But you have to.
Right, you have to in order to make Obamacare work, because you have Ed Bertarelli,
Yep.
who's 18 years old
But see-
and has cystic fibrosis.
But here was my
that
biggest
requires
problem. When President Obama looked at my daughter through the TV and said, you can keep your health care.
well,
I mean, wait a minute,
you
be
know,
honest.
call
You're
Obama.
20 years old, you have to overpay, because someday, when you get to my mother's age at 93,
Yep.
there's no way you can pay enough.
You know,
That's where the draw is.
But you got to
Is
just
at
be
the end.
honest.
Yeah.
and
But what's the point?
Be
though? Being
honest.
It worked, didn't
I
it?
was going to say, being honest, it would
Yeah,
never
now,
have
Ed,
happened.
is
what
it
did
not
Gruber say?
imploding?
What did Gruber say?
Yeah, but yes.
What did Gruber say? If we were honest with the people, it wouldn't
It
never got
would never
passed.
pass.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that remark was let skate, basically.
But I mean, realistically, would
not-
you ever advocate turning your back on a sick person?
What
No,
kind of question
But
is
see,
that?
but see,
But that's what they throw at you.
Yeah, but
It's like
yeah,
saying,
but I
do you,
mean,
Ed, do you
again-
love your mother?
Well,
No,
the
but-
point is, yeah, exactly. But
You know-
but to go back a little to Massachusetts, because we go to the national, but this is the budget buster in our state budget, and the budget buster in
In
all
every
the
state budget.
We're talking Massachusetts, and here is this percentage creeping up every year.
So you're saying we have a moral obligation to take care of our citizens.
No,
no, I didn't say that. You're
How
not
so?
listening to
If
me.
they're
You're
sick,
you're not listening to me.
What's-
We have a moral obligation
yeah.
to treat people
what
who
does
have
that
an
mean?
illness,
If I'm sick,
who
Will
have
you
a
treat me?
need for treat. Yes.
you said
Okay.
you
Absolutely.
didn't say sick people. You
take
just said-
care of people. Okay, when do I need taken care of? When I'm sick?
Well,
Or
some
you
people
might have
think-
a
Some
broken-
people think you need to be taken care of all the time.
Well, no, I'm not saying
according to you.
financially.
Yeah.
I'm
No.
sorry.
Well-
From a healthcare point
Maybe
of
a
view.
broken leg.
Okay.
That's not sick.
Come on.
Well, what do we? I think we're getting into
Yeah.
the.
No,
we're-
no,
we're
but
getting into-
realistically, my problem
Yeah.
is what I'm seeing is this is a drive to a single payer system. Plain and simple, because if you look and they talk about, well, this.
What do you think of that?
This is, I don't understand how that works.
What
Well,
was?
okay, but again, as
No,
I
but
say,
If my premium goes up 40%, because you're getting one company bidding, and when they bid, they jack your rates, but half the people, we've determined you can only pay $180 a month.
you get a subsidy.
So
Right.
if the rate is $600 a month and it goes to $800 or $900, wait a minute, I'm being told I can only pay $180. The feds will pick up the rest.
Of course.
Yeah.
And once you're
Well-
used to that, how do you get unused
But
to it?
you don't. And that's why I say it almost feels like what we called Obamacare is going to implode on itself
Well, this is
because
what Bob had
it-
said.
what- yeah.
I think
what
Bob
I-
had said at the beginning, it was designed to do that.
was
Because
designed to
once
fail.
they knew a certain number of people who got on the Medicaid rolls, the bets were off. But it was designed to, the number of people on Medicaid expanded. Now we're at the crisis point. But the last president who did this is conveniently out of office. And they know a striking fact is when you open a door in American politics, you don't close it.
But Ed,
Well,
he was very consistent. The one thing I'll give
I thought
Obama,
you just said he misled your
he
daughter.
said his primary objective, let me finish, was wealth redistribution, and he didn't care how he got
Of
there.
course he did.
So him looking at my daughter, the ends justify the means, saying you can continue to pay a reasonable amount until you need more money. To me, I think that's just a rationalization. He wanted to get it through. Was it honest? No, I think he was being economical with the truth.
Well, then you also have
Yeah.
to look at the other thing is that, and then we probably should go to another topic because, on national level, but,
Well, I think you should address how Trump is.
Yeah,
I mean,
But
the
here we
question-
go. Now we've got Republicans who for 7 years have taken 50-odd votes to kill Obamacare.
Right.
And then they got the gun and the bullets.
No, the
they
bullets.
got no
are-
target.
Not quite.
Yeah, no.
Not
Okay,
quite.
then
Not
tell
quite.
me how, because I don't like this repeal and replace.
Well, again,
I want replace.
Yeah.
Give me a system that you believe works.
That's where I find the problem is that I agree that they've been talking for years and years. It's a major campaign point and then it comes time that you're there and you don't really have a plan.
And 137 of them voted with the Democrats.
know,
Well,
today.
but that's my problem,
know,
Bobby.
I just, that's where I think that.
What is the plan
That's-
that the Republican Party believes will work?
There isn't a
That's-
Republican,
No.
there's not a Republican Party view on this.
Yes.
Unlike the Democrats. And again, this is what amazes me. When Democrats from every other part of, every district in the country vote in lockstep, even though they know that parts of it are detrimental, it shows you party discipline, which the Republicans have never had, and probably never should have. Because there are enough people, but you've said,
But don't we value the fact that you can say you're, let's face it, Massachusetts Republican
well, we're not saying that, though.
is not the same as a
But
square
I asked
state
you, I know, but
No, there's no
I
question.
just want to point this out. Neither is a Democrat from Missouri is the same as a Democrat from Massachusetts.
I think they're a lot closer.
I'm just asking a question, is that we, you know, again, we seem to be into this whirlpool of this, is that
I guess my problem is I like the fact that you don't have a completely homogenized group called Republicans.
well, when you're
Yes.
faced against united opposition, it's awfully hard to get done.
And that's
stuff.
why I
And,
think-
by the way, they don't really have the gun and the bullets, because I'll go back to something that happened when Newt Gingrich was Speaker, or was about to become Speaker. They were consistently in the House of Representatives. They had a lot of more conservative Democrats. And so you'd see a roll call where 28, 30 Democrats voted with the Republicans. Well, most of those people have been replaced by Republicans. So the districts now are pretty clear as to who you are. I think the thing that gets me is the small businessmen in America they've lost their voice in Washington, because Obamacare hurts small businesses. It hurts job creation. It hurts a lot of the mandates on employer benefits
a lot
and
of
whatever.
the regulations. I mean, I look at Obamacare as one, but running a startup.
Yep.
When we saw the additional burden that was put on us, it was killing us.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
You know, but we'll talk about that.
Another
again.
time.
Yeah.
But now, you say they don't have the gun and the bullets. I think the American public believe the Senate is controlled by the Republican Party. The House is controlled by the Republican Party.
Right.
But
The
again,
executive wing
but
is
didn't
controlled.
you just say, though, that you like the fact that people in the Republican Party didn't march lockstep? And
Yes.
Okay. Well, what you're seeing here is
Yeah, the
is that
result.
Yeah, that's exactly
you're
right.
seeing Freedom Caucus, which are pretty conservative
Yep.
people who are talking about money.
Pretty conservative.
Talking about money.
Yeah.
Well, they're as about as on that side as our Massachusetts delegation is
Right.
on the other
Yep.
side. And then you have moderate Republicans and more business-minded Republicans talk about other issues. So,
Yeah.
so unless you have some Democrat support to come in, you're sort of stymied. But as I said, you know,
But
And then
who's
you
going
have
to come
your-
up with a health plan
Then you have
that we
the-
can all get behind?
Then you have your liberal Republicans that just are not, they want Obamacare.
well,
Yep.
I think the thing, though, is the Republic, and again, Bob said this at the last show. They shouldn't have brought it up the first time. They shouldn't have brought it up this time. What's the rush? Because it's clear to a lot of people, the Democrat Party is not going to basically say Obamacare is collapsing. The public needs evidence of it,
Right.
and they did this. The Republicans did it too soon.
Isn't
Yeah,
that what Trump
that's-
said when he said, if I really thought about it, I should have left it alone and
Yes.
let it
Absolutely.
implode
What
on
it-
its own?
Exactly. And then now you're doing exactly. The public's going to go, who got us into this pickle?
Right.
Yep.
And point to the Democrats. But here we're trying to tweak around it, and we're all dumping on the Republicans.
So you got Rahm Emanuel, the quote Rahm Emanuel, never let a crisis go to waste.
Right.
Okay? And what they should have done is they should have let Obamacare reach the critical level
Yep.
and let everybody go over the cliff.
But
and
don't
when
people get
everybody
hurt that
when-
way?
No, well, wait.
Well,
Well,
hold
people are
on.
going to get hurt this
They
way.
are. Well, if we
No, what's
continue
go-
this way, it's going to happen.
What's going to happen this
We can debate this
Yeah.
forever. Let's
Yep.
go to something else you just said. The Democrats walk in lockstep.
Yeah, generally.
So we had something happen, Supreme Court, that I think was horrible. The whole Gorsuch thing to me was horrible, because what scares me, not him, I think he's absolutely qualified. But the Democrats came out and said, we don't care who you're going to nominate. We ain't voting for him.
Yeah, that's,
Same thing the Republicans did way
okay,
back.
but, yeah.
Okay? Well, now, the 60 vote rule made me feel more like you got to pick somebody that's kind of
They wouldn't have
centralist.
voted for anyone, as you just
But
said.
says-
They said, anyone you nominate, we're voting against.
Yeah.
What if we nominated a Democrat?
But then what happens
Yeah.
when the next Supreme Court justice
What?
passes away or has to step down? Now you work with 7? I mean, you know, let's face it. Democrats come in and say, I don't care, you've slighted me. I don't care who you bring up, because it wasn't Gorsuch. Tell me why he's not qualified.
No one could say that.
No,
They
Right?
That's,
can't
ex-
say
well,
that.
that's exactly.
Everybody
what the
said,
problem
wow, this guy's it. But now,
You saw.
if
you-
the, but
yeah,
let me
yeah.
just, if the Republicans lose the next election big time, you can argue yes or no, but let's say they do. Democrats take over all 3 offices. They nominate a liberal, and the Republicans say, I'm not voting for him.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Well, let's.
What do you do? Do
But
you whittle
but
down
you-
the
you-
Supreme
you-
Court to
Yes,
nobody?
But again, we're talking theoreticals versus what the Republicans had to do to get a Supreme Court. Unless we said to the Republicans said to ex-President Obama, you pick the nominee, and that way everyone will vote to, and it'll be a 91 to 1.
What I'm worried about is you got some old justices
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
that could take that long trip to the court in the sky soon.
Well,
And
again,
then, what's the incentive
but
for
Harry Reid.
Trump
but
to
by-
pick somebody
But
semi-centralist?
by the way, Harry Reid started this when he took away the nuclear option for all the other judgeships.
Yeah.
And they flooded the courts with their nominees. Now, my question is, and I think, we get into I'm, obviously pretty partisan in certain things, but let's just get an issue. So the American public doesn't like politicians for a lot of good reasons, okay? They watched the Democrat senators up there basically inventing reasons to vote against Neil Gorsuch. And the reason they did it, well, some of the things that were brought up were
They
unbelievable.
came out and said, we ain't voting for you.
But let me get to the point. The reason they did that and invested that strategy, because some of them knew better, certainly. I mean,
There's no
people were, but their base is so rabidly anti-Trump that they were told, you remember, I think, by liberal groups that if you even support him, we'll primary you.
Okay.
So
'Cause
most
to
politicians
me,
want to stay in office.
I saw the Democrats very consistent.
Yeah.
They said, the answer is no.
Yeah.
And then during the
but
Doesn't even matter
process,
what the question is. The
we're going
answer
to
is no.
rationalize.
Right.
Yep.
But that's because the black face masks are available through Obamacare. And they all wear 'em.
Bob,
What you're seeing-
eventually,
what you're seeing
you
right
got to get over this, because
Al.
we'll
Not
have
gonna-
no
not gonna-
Supreme
Al,
Court.
Al, what
Yes,
you're
you will.
seeing,
We'll
Al,
always
what-
have a Supreme Court.
Yeah, but Ed, okay, let's just play this out.
Okay.
I am President Trump. One Supreme Court justice goes down. I pick one way to the right.
Okay.
The day the Republicans lose,
Yep.
the Democrats pick them way to the left.
Well, why wouldn't you pick someone who was, since you're going to not have any
Sure.
cooperation? But I want to point out,
Yes,
I want to
that's
point
my
out, I
problem.
want to point out a little history lesson. Who was the first president who tried to tamper with the Supreme Court? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he wanted to stack the court because
Yeah.
there were all these justices who were holdovers, and they looked at his view of law and said, "What's going on here? We've never had thinking like this before." So,
Yep.
I think it's one of those situations.
And I'll give you that you can't necessarily, Kennedy, nobody could predict. I mean, Ginsburg, how would you get her through today? I mean, think about it. This is not a prayer.
Yeah. And that's why, to be honest with you, the only thing that matters in the Supreme Court is counting to 5. And it's just whoever's got the 5. And that's why, as you say, it's just a question of when you're swapping back and forth, just who can count to 5.
Who
The
gets
reason-
to the number 5
That's right.
votes
The
gonna
reason
control
Gorsuch
and
for
the
decades.
the reason
Yep.
Gorsuch was a brilliant choice was that he clerked for Justice Kennedy, and his intellect among both sides, unlike Scalia, who was a little more confrontational and theatrical and brilliant, and he had his Ruth Gator Ginsburg was his close buddy and pal. They were did cultural things together, but Gorsuch is going to be able to influence the court in subtle ways on the law. And that's basically is mostly what it's supposed to be all about.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But what worries me is what you're saying. 4 and 4.
Yep.
So whoever gets that fifth,
The next
if
one.
it's going way right, way left, because you sit there and say, all I need is 51 votes.
And that's why it's hard. It's just going through and you think about 10 years, 15 years is not a long period of time, but just think about what could flip-flop policy-wise in our country, whether it's abortion, whether it's immigration, whether it's whatever. And the courts
But it's
are so
20 years.
powerful.
Gorsuch is not going to be there for 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, I meant
Well,
like
I mean,
over a 10 or
well,
15 year
that's what I'm
period.
saying. He's
gonna
Well,
be
some
more
of these
long
guys
term.
will
Well,
be,
but
yeah,
the,
there's
Ed,
no
that's what I'm
question.
saying. You're putting somebody in. So if you have 4 and 4,
Yeah.
and you pick the fifth,
Right.
unless there's some old guys there, and unless the parties
Yeah.
change,
Yeah.
you could influence to the right or the left the Supreme Court.
Well, that's what-
That's
heavy.
right.
Yeah.
But that's
That's
what
right.
that was designed when they put Clarence Thomas and other young justices on, was to influence the court. But let's get back to it. The American people, the last time I looked, vote and it's a referendum. I mean, they vote for both parties.
Yes.
In the last, under Obama and in this election, the Democrat Party is at the weakest point it's been since the Depression. So in state legislators, after state legislatures, in governorships, the Republicans control a huge number of governorships, and in the House of Representatives, they've never been this way. So the part of the public is saying, we like this approach. So we can talk about it in the Massachusetts sense, but
I am disappointed in the Republican Party over this appointment. Not the man, but the means. I know I will be equally disappointed when the Democrats someday have the gun and the bullets and they pick somebody far to the left.
well, Al, we needed a Supreme Court justice, and under the circumstances, we would have never had one unless the Republicans said, pick a Democrat for the
Understood.
seat.
There's no question.
And you
I
know
mean, the
what,
court
the
system
ne-
goes slow
But
enough,
would
and it was at
Gorsuch
4
be
and
the
4.
next nomination?
That,
What do you mean, Gorsuch? He's-
Let's say
No.
Gorsuch, it was Smith that
No.
got in now. Somebody dies.
No.
Yeah, but that-
Would they pick somebody
Yeah,
as
but
centralist
wait
as
a minute,
Gorsuch?
but these are hypotheticals where no one asked the Democrats when they pick nominees to do this. This is what gets me. There's a double standard here, because we're supposed to just like we're doing with Sertage, we self-examine. The Democrats have always seemed to me that they had goals.
Sure.
And they never took our eye off the prize, to use a Kennedy quote or whatever. We get involved in this and that.
But let's shift the budget.
Long-term goal.
Didn't the Democrats just win big on the budget?
Yes.
Well,
I
the
mean,
fact
whether you-
that there was a budget would show that there was a win, yes, yeah. Because the Senate,
The wall.
well,
Okay, that got put off. I mean, let's go through some
well,
of the things.
but you can't,
yeah.
Donald Trump he has a certain style of speaking that's, what'd you
Blunt.
say, dramatic and blunt and whatever.
So it
And
tweaks a lot.
Yeah.
And, well, and I think that's a negative in it.
But he also throws out the big stuff.
Yeah.
He throws out the big stuff and he pulls it back. And he throws it out and he pulls it
and
back.
How
by
did
the
they
way-
get
And he
away
throws
with?
it-
It feels like a lot of the primary
All these
pranks.
absolutely. All those programs he wanted to cut
The budget contains a huge increase in border
in
spending.
military spending.
And there are different ways. There's a wall and there's another wall. And what's happened is, I'll give you the example. What is illegal immigration? Down by 70% since
Right.
Trump has been in.
Right.
That's a wall. It's not a physical wall. It's a wall
Well,
of.
no, he has had an impact. You can't take that
Yes,
away.
yes.
But when I listen to him saying, I'm going to cut NIH, I'm going to cut EPA, whether you agree or not,
Don't you think he's just saying that for
but EPA got cut 1% in this proposal. It didn't get cut. NIH got an increase. I mean, what went up is how much we're going to spend.
well, National Institutes of Health is obviously an issue that.
But, I mean, let's face it. We did not trim the deficit.
Well, but
I mean,
he
the-
never.
You're not going to trim
But
the
wait,
deficit.
he never said he was going to trim the deficit.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah, but
he
didn't I
never.
vote for him
No,
because,
he
or
did.
if I'm a square stater,
No.
Yeah.
didn't I vote for him because he was
No.
going to drain the swamp?
Yeah.
and
Drain
make
Drain
it
the
more-
swamp.
but
I
he
was just
never
gonna have-
said he was going to trim the deficit. He never said those words. He said he was going to do jobs. He was going to build a wall. He said he was going to repeal Obamacare. He never said that he
So
was
if
going
I
to get rid of the
voted
deficit.
for him, because I thought he was going to fix government.
Well,
I never thought
wait a
that
minute, I
meant
have a
spend
question.
less.
I have a question. If you're put in a CEO of a company that's going on the Titanic course, I give you 100 days to fix it?
No.
No, you would never take that job in a million years
That-
because you're
No,
basically
to me,
saying.
very well.
That
that's a-
is something
Yeah,
that
is
was
that a
put
question?
in for political.
Yeah.
But
I'm
again, what I'm trying to say is, we're trying to judge someone on 100 days as the world sped up
No,
that
what I'm
fast.
asking you for is,
The budget on the whole. I mean, just talking
are we
about
going
that, not
towards
the
the
100
right
days.
direction?
Yes.
Yes.
Will he cut?
Gradually.
Now, I'm not saying in 100 days. I'm sorry. I can't imagine you turn
Okay,
a
we
super
were just talking about that,
Well,
though,
wait a minute.
as though he
You-
said he was
look at-
going to.
You look at what Trump does is, and what he's doing. He picks Ben Carson for the
HUD.
for the head of HUD, okay? And what's the first thing Ben Carson does? Ben Carson gets in there and he says, "I want to audit HUD." So he audits HUD, and he finds out $400 billion
Billion.
is unaccounted. 400
Right.
billion is unaccounted for.
We don't hear that in the
so
press. Yeah.
what do you think's going to happen? Ben Carson is going to find the $400 billion, or that $400 billion is not going to be spent this year.
See, that's what
Okay?
I want to hear.
So
That-
now wait a minute. Now hold on. All right. He puts someone in charge of the VA. What does the guy do who gets in charge of the VA? He says, "I'm going to run the VA differently than it's run today," and he starts running it differently, and he starts getting rid of all the dead weight in the VA, because basically all the VA was doing was pushing drugs and then waiting for people to die.
But we don't, Bobby, we don't hear that. What we're hearing about
Well,
the VA
well,
is
no, you
wait,
don't hear
wait
that
times
because you
haven't
don't-
increased,
Well,
haven't decreased.
Yep.
Care hasn't gotten better.
But you know what? That's the press's fault, and there's nothing that this group can do about it,
No.
because the press is never, ever, ever going to say a good thing about Donald Trump.
And
If Donald Trump,
You're absolutely
if
right, but
Donald-
he's also not helping it with the way he's acting.
Of course he isn't,
And
but-
I understand, but you cut off your nose to spite your face. At this point, I understand, and I totally agree with you. They never would.
and he's
But
not
the
going to
point-
play
I mean,
to him.
George Bush was a totally different again, and he got a semi-fair shake from the press.
Yep.
But I think that the thing is interesting is
You think Bush got a semi-fair shake from the press?
semi-fair.
Compared to Trump, Bobby,
Oh, compared to
Now,
Trump.
but let me just
you
put,
know, when
okay,
you say what's the prettiest warthog in the bunch, we're not saying warthogs are pretty.
no, but the
I
question-
would argue that Bush
But-
got treated a lot more fairly than Trump
Yeah,
ever
but
did.
that's still pretty
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
It's still an ugly warthog.
87% of the Trump stories in the past 100 days, 87% of them about Trump were negative.
Well, what was it?
Or- or-
94% of the reporters donated to the Hillary campaign.
Yeah.
So he's gained 7 points.
But they start out with a negative attitude.
But
Or-
again, it's in their upbringing, in
DNA.
their education.
Right.
The days of a reporter starting on the corner being a reporter. Most of these kids are trust fund babies that come from Ivy League schools, and you know what the education in Ivy League schools is like today.
But Ed, I've got
well-
over 2 hours a day in the car. I listen to Fox, I listen to CNN, because I know somewhere in between is probably reality.
But Fox is the
Them
only
us.
outlet. You also have, if you put on ABC, CBS,
Yeah,
and NBC
but I'm just
News.
saying, I
Well,
listen to both sides,
But,
Yeah.
but
knowing
Al,
that
Al,
somewhere
I'm
in the
just
middle.
trying to say, one station versus 100 is,
Yeah.
okay, they're not equal. So let's
No,
put it
I'm
that
not
way.
saying they are.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah.
inviting dictators that are not the nicest people, what's the logic there? Kim Jong, blech. Why would you throw an olive branch?
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's a recent. I would think number one that let's get beyond the headline and say I think that when the premier of China, the president of China, whatever, and Trump met in Florida, they have a plan to.
See, that's
eliminate him.
where I'm
See?
coming out saying,
Yeah.
I think Trump is turning down the heat,
Because
saying, okay, Chris, you're going to carry the heavy water for a while. I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to seem like the nicest guy towards
then-
them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you know the only way you're getting through to North Korea is through China.
That's right.
and
I mean,
justifiably.
and there's just, you're not getting anything done unless China's on board. They have been their supporter, both for arms, for
And-
technology, for, I guarantee you, that's where they were getting
You
their
don't think
nuclear
they know
technology.
that if you left North Korea alone,
Yeah.
South Korean values and
No.
structure would
Yeah.
just take over?
Yeah, but they
There's-
can't
there's
because
no
there's a penetrable barrier of propaganda. Right
Yeah.
now, it's a world.
but-
This is the book
Ed.
1980.
Ed, if they sealed the border, and they've got plenty of troops to do that, and didn't trade with North
Do they
Korea,
have a wall?
it would blow up.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
wall of people they could make. It would blow up.
The problem is though the wall of people are the poor citizens of that country. Okay, because I mean you have people who are eating dirt.
They're starving.
Who are
Yeah.
turning their neighbors in because they want an
They're
extra
starving.
meal. They want an extra meal. Just take, we talk about a lot of people out there are illiterate. Just take a world like the book 1984, where human beings have been turned into basically people who exist to survive.
Right.
You could never convince me that you know what you would do. Chris, if Anne was about to perish because she didn't have food, do you know what you'd do to save her?
I'd rob the neighbor's house.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't
No,
know.
you
North
turn
Korea,
on your
yeah.
neighbor.
Bobby, I don't know what I would do
Of
if my
course you
kids
would.
were going
Yeah.
to starve to
Of course
death.
you would.
But
Yeah,
let's-
you do know what you would
I would do what is necessary.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Okay, but
So you know.
But we're not talking about an
Yeah.
outlaw state here.
Yeah.
You're implying that if someone's starving, they're going to go on and commit crime. That there's not even any. The only crime in North Korea is the leadership and the party. Whatever. We cannot. Americans cannot even wrap their minds.
saying. We can't understand.
Yeah,
Right.
we can't even wrap your minds around what this regime has done to its own people and turn them into. But my question would be, or my point is, I think the strategy has to be, since they share a huge border, and a little border with Russia, by the way, but a huge border with up in the north. The Russians made sure
But
at
the
the end.
Russians aren't worried
No, I
that
didn't.
they'll get
I
flooded
didn't,
with
I
refugees.
didn't say that. But on this side, the Chinese have moved people. And the problem is, the Nut has got nuclear weapons. And so when you have that, unless there's a way to pinpointly take them out, and my idea is, I guess, that the meeting in China might have been, with the Chinese might have been, listen, that's your scope of influence. Let's get Ping out of there, and you put who you want in, because something has to. Anything
Anything would be better than him.
And take the nuclear weapons away.
But see, and that's
Absolutely.
what worries me.
Because, yeah,
Well,
this is
why?
just,
Why does it worry?
Hey.
That they have nuclear weapons in the
Well,
hand of
Oh,
an
yeah.
idiot.
Sure.
there's no
Because
question.
I don't know if this guy isn't going to be one that
But
says,
don't you think that was brilliant on his part? Because
Sure.
it
Yeah.
takes all bets are off.
Yeah.
The normal things that we could do in certain countries.
no, I think the brilliant part
Yeah.
that I hope is happening is Trump saying, okay, Chris, you said you'd take care of it. I got to back off. I'm lowering the heat.
Absolutely.
And then,
I'm waiting for you to take care. If you don't,
Then it's
we
coming
talk
back.
again.
Absolutely. Because let me tell you, if I lived in Seattle, Los Angeles, Honolulu, I'd be nervous. I'm telling you.
remember the video of him? They showed at a party of blowing up San Francisco.
Yep.
With weapons or whatever. It shows you the level.
I would be
I mean,
nervous.
I'd like to change the subject for a minute and talk about NAFTA, okay? You have Trump that says, I'm going to renegotiate NAFTA. So what does he do? He turns around with Canada, one of our #1 trading
Absolutely.
partners, okay? And he says, now, Canada ships 80% of its lumber into the United States, duty-free, okay? They will not take American beef into Canada. So what does Trump say? He says, I'm going to put an embargo on shipping lumber into the United States. That's it. And so, now wait. So now everybody throws the, what are you doing? What
see,
are you doing to
that's
Canada?
what-
Wait a minute.
I'm
hold on
wondering
for-
if that wasn't calculated.
Hold on
of
for
course
a minute.
it was.
Yes.
Hold on for
Yeah.
a minute. So, okay, so everybody says, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you going to do? How are you going to reach out to the president of Canada? And he says, why do I have to reach out to the president of Canada?
Trust me,
He
he's
said-
gonna
he
call
says,
me.
They have a surplus.
Yeah.
They have to reach out to me. So now the president of Canada says, hey, Can we sit down?
Yes,
And he
see?
says,
See,
he says, of course you can.
That
we can
to
sit
me,
down.
I could see
that's
Trump reaching out
create-
saying, Bobby, I want to renegotiate.
That's
and
create-
Bobby saying no.
That's creating.
I make this grandiose, I'm going to
But is
blow
that
it
the
all
point?
up,
But that's
and now I get you to
creating-
the
Is it the
table.
point?
Yep, exactly.
That's negotiating from a position
of
of
strength.
strength.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay?
unlike
So-
the last regime that
No, of course.
seemed to
Unlike the
apologize
last
for the country.
regime that went there and said, we're sorry.
Yeah,
we're sorry. We've
apology
never
tour.
offended the Canadian people, but we're sorry anyways.
Right.
Okay?
We'll
we're
find a
sorry
reason
to
to
the Germans.
apologize.
We're sorry to the Japanese.
Yeah.
We're going to lead from behind. You know?
And then
this is-
all the remarks, which were really offensive, always apologizing and making excuses about our troubled past and our history. Okay? President Obama, there's no country in the world.
Wait a minute. Did it not bother you that he was apologizing about our history to countries
Yes.
that invaded, that bombed, that
Yes.
murdered?
Yes. There's,
I mean, wait a minute.
Yeah.
yeah, there's
Yeah,
no,
I'm missing something in
there's
this
no
equation.
country in the world, and our history probably isn't taught that much in the schools anymore because it's, that's
It's
where
not
the subjects
politically
are.
correct.
Exactly.
Exactly.
There's no country in the history of the world that has welcomed more immigrants. That's a fact. It's unarguable. Now, the other thing I think which Trump has done amazingly is between the Keystone Pipeline and the North Dakota Pipeline, we're going to see the fruits of. We are now a net energy exporter for the first time, which again we don't hear from the New York Times or the
Correct.
Washington Post. We went from,
No, you heard. You heard that we're increasing pollution
Yes,
by
exactly.
being an exporter.
Right. But we're also.
Right?
yeah,
But we're also, we're becoming one of the number one oil exporters.
yes,
Yeah.
Okay? And we're exporting sweet crude as opposed to the crude
The heavy crude.
The heavy crude that they're exporting from Egypt. Okay? Which
Well,
is why
Saudi
we want
has,
the Keystone Pipeline.
if you've ever gone out to the Lost Quarter, the eastern part, you see mountains of sulfur
Yeah.
that they've had to extract out of the heavy crude.
Yes.
They just don't know what to do with it.
Right.
I mean, I was amazed when I used to go to Othmania or Udalia, and you're looking at just mountains in the desert of
what
elemental
a
sulfur.
disaster! What a disaster!
But
Well, this
we-
has been fun, but we're out of time.
We officially out of time.
We're officially out of time.
well, thank you very much.
16 seconds.
16 seconds left.
I'd like to make a pitch that says, citizens of Milford, that we lobby to change our town election from April to May. Most towns do it in May. I think we've cursed with bad weather in April. Let's move it to May.
Bring it up at town meeting. That's how things happen in
yep,
Milford.
yep.
Hopedale does it in May.
Lots of people do because of the weather.
Yeah.
When you see the fundamental turnout we've been having,
Yeah.
especially on rainy days,
Brutal.
I don't
brutal
know
days.
of any downside.
Did you see that nasty? That was a truly nasty,
was.
cold,
Well,
nasty
guys,
day.
we've got to stop. I want to thank our 6 loyal viewers as always. Thank you for watching. May God bless, and may tomorrow be a better day than today. And stay tuned, because in about 6 weeks, we'll have more information to talk about. Good night, all.
Not too long since I've been home.